Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Building a Single Source of Truth and why GovCons need an integrated CRM ERP platform. We're excited to have you here. And we've got really excited to be doing this with Kim Koster, an industry leader and author of our Gauge solution. Kim, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. I'm Kim Koster, and I am currently the VP of Product Marketing at Unanet. I did get the privilege of spending 22 years working for two of the giant GovCons as a finance professional. So I've done a lot of forecasting and a lot of long-range plans. And so I look forward to talking to you today about how we can really make those better and usable and drive our business and growth with an integrated set of tools. So thanks, John.
Thank you, and I'm glad to be here with you. So I'm John Sisson. I'm the EVP of CRM for our GovCon side. Um, my role is helping our clients to grow their business, leveraging our growth suite set of tools. My background is about 26 years of CRM. Of that, 21 with Salesforce, implementing for about 3,200 companies, of which about 800 are GovCons. I think we're excited today because we want to give you the full view from CRO to CFO viewpoint of really how forecasting impacts a business.
Yeah, and one thing that's going to be really unique about this is we're going to have a lot of great gauge stats that are going to really support the need for good forecasting. So I think that's really important too as we move through the presentation.
All right. So before we kick off, we just want to do a quick overview of who is Unanet. And so Unanet is an interesting and unique, I believe, company in the fact that we are in the business of helping project-based businesses to grow, to become more profitable, and ensure that we're compliant in doing all these different elements of their business. And it really does run from how do we identify new opportunities to how do we measure our relationships and our pipeline and forecast. One of the reasons we're here. How do we simplify the process of modifying and creating pink team proposals and ensuring compliance on that, and then moving into understanding how that impacts projects and finance, and are we making money, and how are we tying that back into project work. And when we look at us, the thing that really drew me to Unanet is the 37 years of business and the 4,000 customers. Primarily, the majority of those are government contractors. So we're excited to have you here, and we're looking forward to a good day.
All right, so let's just jump in and talk about forecasting. So, a lot of times when we talk about forecasting, it gets framed as a finance exercise. And so, a lot of people think there's some great mystery that's going on behind the scenes, and the CFO and the controller and the accounting team come out with a forecast. But that really isn't what it's about. It's not all about reporting numbers. It's about building confidence in your ability to grow. So your growth plans, whether those plans are hiring or creating new capabilities or pursuing bigger contracts with different agencies or different types of contracts, it depends on having leaders that actually can trust the information that's being given to them. And if you can't reliably predict your revenue, your margins, or your cash flow, you're going to absolutely be flying blind. You're not going to have a strategy that you can execute to. So the real challenge in these forecasts is when not having that single source of truth. So having functional groups using all different types of tools, all of the data being siloed, not the same, and that makes it very difficult order to plan, and it causes the business to not have trust in the forecast. So it becomes more guesswork than it is strategy. So what we really want to talk about, John, I think, is predictability. So leaders want to know that the forecast is reality. It's not just a finance model in the background. And that only happens when we have that connected, reliable, and timely data flowing across the entire business. So forecasting is not a finance problem. It's a growth problem. And solving it really starts with building a trusted, shared source of truth. Okay. All right. So I've done a lot of long-range plans in my lifetime. And, it's hard. Actually, forecasting in general is hard. But what you really need to have in order to do that is a full picture of what your revenue streams can look like. So first, we'll start off and we have current projects and contracts. So we know what those are. They've been awarded, they've been funded, and we're executing them. And I don't want to minimize how hard it is, though, to forecast those projects, even though they've been awarded and they've been funded. That also is very difficult. A lot of different players are moving around trying to figure out exactly how that forecast and that project should be executed. Next, we'll have active proposals. So those are things that we are bidding or things that we know we're going to bid. And then you can take those bids and use a forecasting methodology. You can use P-win. That's normally how you risk adjust a forecast. Or you can use some other different types of forecasting methods like probability of award. And we have a white paper actually coming out on probability of award here soon. So look for that on LinkedIn. Then we also have our early stage opportunities, or what I call the crystal ball. So these are out in our long-term pipeline. Excuse me. These are projects we don't know if we're going to bid them or not. We think that we might. They're in early planning stage. And these may be market shifts for us, different changes. So we don't necessarily want to forecast these at 100%, but we do need to know things like, when is it going to start? When is it going to end? And what the assumptions are. So this is a huge benefit. Having all three of those together in one forecast and being able to factor them is huge. It makes a major impact in being able to forecast your indirect rates, which definitely has a huge impact on whether or not you're competitive. Now I want to talk just a little bit about the gauge report. So if you're not familiar with the gauge report, I hope you'll go out after we talk about it a little bit and you'll go out and download it. It's out on the Unanet website. And it is a industry benchmarking report based on a survey of government contractors, really of all shapes and sizes. We partner with CohnReznick, and this is our 9th edition. And I'm proud to be an author and one of the founders of this report. And I think it's just absolutely invaluable. The other thing about the report is when you look at it, it also breaks down data and information by revenue size so that you can look and see what other people within your size are doing and how you measure up to those folks within those benchmarks. Okay, so one of the first things we always ask that I love is, what is keeping you up at night? And this year it got replaced from, recruiting and retention to political environment. That became the number one. And over the last 2 years, that has crept up, but this is the first time it's moved into the number 1 position, and it had a 9-point increase from last year. I know we've talked about it a lot. We're all seeing those shifting priorities, a lot of change within the government contracting industry, and it's definitely causing a lot of angst and concern, amongst those playing in that business. That just makes it even more important to really concentrate on your growth strategy and be looking at ways that you can execute better and align your proposals, your resource planning, as well as your forecast. We're also seeing a lot of pressure on the pipeline. 79% of firms reported that they have challenges winning new contracts. That's very high. And 43 specifically have called out pipeline performance as a major issue to one of their BD teams. The other thing that's important here to understand is that, one of the other main things is lack of business development resources. And that's been a top challenge for BD teams for a long time. So I think winning work and winning at consistency remains a key stressor across the industry. And in this environment, you really can't have your business development and your finance organization, sitting in silos. What we really want is that tight integration where finance is informing the smart pursuit and business development is bringing realistic forecasts to the table. So there's that communication. I know from my prior experience, that's very hard when it's sitting in a bunch of Excel spreadsheets, trying to run the business development executive down to figure out what we need to put in the forecast and spend the time in a meeting to understand it does take time. It can actually take days if they're off traveling or doing something else or out. So, it's very important to me to have that alignment, and that alignment includes integrated tools and systems. Okay. Now, we talked about the external pressures. Let's talk a little bit about the internal pressures. So what we're seeing now is GovCon said that The second largest indirect expense they have is business development. That's the first time in 9 years that that has happened. So we know that companies are spending a lot of money trying to chase contracts and win contracts. And we know that there've been fewer opportunities, and we can see that over on the right-hand side, where it's going to show you the proposals, the number of proposals of major contracts, task orders, and modifications, as well as the number of opportunities that are being chased. So again, we're spending a lot of money. We need to find ways to be more efficient, and we need to find ways to align business development with finance. Okay, when I showed John Sisson this chart, he was so excited. He said, this is an independent look. This is gauge data showing us that, that forecasting is hard, and pipeline forecasting is hard. It's very important, and it's not very accurate. So let me kind of explain this chart. So we took all the different forecasts that make up the cost of the business. And so then what we did is ask our respondents how important they were, and then how accurate they were. And then we also asked them how frequently they were doing those forecasts. And it's kind of interesting here that pipeline is very important, and it is the least accurate forecast on this chart. The other thing that flows through these is the labor resource as well as the indirect rates. And each one of those three are important, and there's a different range of accuracy, but they're not done as much. So the green, the smaller the dot, the less frequently that forecast is done. Now, project cost and cash flow, those are done more frequently. They have more accurate. They're very important, obviously, to the business. But probably the reason they're more accurate is because those are really controlled by finance. So those are something that they have their hands in, and that they can actually go in and forecast without necessarily all of the information from the pipeline. So there's more direct costs that are coming in. We also then ask about following your forecasting policies and procedures. And this was staggering to me. 47% say they don't have any formal procedures at all. And I've been out doing a lot of assessments over the years of companies, and that's true. Or those policies and procedures were sitting in a 3-ring binder on a shelf. So, with only 21% saying they strictly follow those policies and procedures, we can see why we don't necessarily have a disciplined forecast process, and we don't have the forecast and the accuracy that we want to have. So, John, anything you want to talk about on that chart a little bit? Anything that came up to your mind about that?
I had not seen it put this way, but to me, and I was a business owner for a long time, this resonated to be extremely true, which is, if I don't understand my pipeline, I really don't understand the impact it'll have on cash flow. I don't understand project costs and past performance. And therefore, as Kim, you mentioned, I'm continually guessing. In this market, we cannot guess.
That's right. That's right. Not right now. We need to be as accurate as we possibly can. This year, the Gauge report was actually on project management and resource planning. So we've got a lot of great information. Like I said, please go down and download it. It's a really good one, especially for the things that are going on within our industry at this time. So we ask about the alignment between project, proposal planning, and resource management. And it was interesting. 17% said they're totally aligned. That's actually a pretty small slice of the pie. 63% said they mostly align, but they're a big challenge. I can tell you that from trying to do some of these plans, it's very, very hard to do it, especially if you're not in an integrated system where you're using any kind of a spreadsheet and you're trying to put those together. Plan can actually take 6 to 8 weeks to do, even in a small organization. And by that time, all that information is, pretty much not valid. So, when it talks about still a big challenge, it looks to me like there's a tremendous amount of opportunity between big challenge and very disconnected for firms to really make a true effect on their business by looking at integrating these tools. And I know there's a lot of information too in there about resource management maturity and tying that back to your proposal as well as your project plans within the Gauge itself. So there's a lot of thought leadership too that's actually in the Gauge report. Okay, so this chart talks about win rates. And you can see the revenue bands on this chart, as well as employee size. And then there's a total that comes across. So the top half is actual win rates over the past 12 months. So overall, 35% reported win rates between 26 and 50%, which is the most common range. Smaller companies, obviously, it's more difficult for them, are sitting on the lower end of the win rate spectrum, and larger companies are definitely more consistently above 50% win rates. So size and maturity definitely plays an impact in the win consistency. And I think win consistency and predictability is really where we want to be. And if I look at the bottom section of this chart, it's the projected win rate. And so what we really see is a transference between the 26 to 50 up into the 0 to 25%. So everybody's hoping to get better, and looking at tools, a lot of that maybe through AI, John. I mean, I think that's definitely something that people are looking at to make their jobs easier and more efficient, especially when they don't have enough BD resources and the cost is going up. So I think that's very key. And lastly here, let me get to the chart. So everything we've talked about so far, pipeline pressure, forecasting gaps, resource alignment, win rates, it all comes down to really having people, processes, and tools that support this overall ecosystem. Okay. So when I talk about system, I'm not talking about software. I mean, I'm talking about trained people who understand what they're doing with each other and the effect they have on each other within the business. Then processes that they can work to and that we know are going to yield us the proper result. And then making sure that everybody's trained on those processes and that training is role-based. I think that's really important also. So, with modern GovCons, they're definitely going to need integrated systems to bring together business development, project management, finance, resource planning into one single source of truth. And that's what's going to give us confidence in our numbers and confidence in that growth strategy. And so I think this is the perfect setup now, John, for you to take it and talk about how to resolve all these issues that we've been talking about.
No, Kim, thank you. And this is, of all the podcasts we've done so far, the one that I've been looking forward to the most, because it's the number one challenge I'm seeing in the marketplace. So how do we take everything that Kim said? And by the way, if you haven't checked out the gauge, it's awesome. It's uniquely Unanet, and it's something that adds value for every GovCon that we work with. So how do we take this and we build this into driving forecasting accuracy? Because as every GovCon that we're working with wants three things. They want increased revenue, they want increased profit, and as Kim said, they want predictable revenue and profit. So what are the building blocks that go into this? And we say this because if you think about a BD process, this all ties in. I need to identify more opportunities. I need to be able to make sure that we are understanding and scoring those opportunities so the best opportunities are continually bubbling up. I'm managing my relationships, my teams, my partners, my customers to the best of our ability. I'm accurately forecasting, and then, and generating accurate and make sure that the proposals we're putting in are compliant. And then I'm constantly using really the role of Kim's team to make sure that we're profitable, that we're tying that back to past performance. All those things have to be intertwined. So when we talk about this, so we're going to go through this and kind of talk about the building blocks of forecasting accuracy. So obviously, any type of sales process, it starts at the beginning, right? And it's how do we continue to find and qualify opportunities? And this is everything from our BD people to our executive relationships to our partners to really making sure that we're taking advantage of the IDIQs and GWACs that we have. One of the biggest things I've seen in my career is, hey, we've got these market intelligence tools, but we're really missing out on GWACs. I don't know what I have. And going back to Kim's point of that early part of this in planning, if I'm missing stuff on GWACs, I'm missing my fastest way to money. And so the question is, how do we do this? And then here's the bigger part of this. Once we've captured everything and we've got a good handle of the market, how do I take data and turn it into intelligence? I had a CEO last week, and it was really well said, is I'm drowning in data, but I really don't have good intelligence. Well, how do we use then scoring systems and things like Kim mentioned on AI to continually bubble up those opportunities so that we're not guaranteeing that these are wins, but we're focused in on the things that are going to have the biggest impact based on relationships, past performance, and our strategy. So how do we continue to do that? And then how do we leverage this to make sure that we're constantly feeding the pipeline, because pipeline cures most issues. Right. Once we have this, and this is the biggest thing, I've done CRM my whole career. And the most excited part of talking with Kim on this is I've only done it from one facet. How do we accurately predict what's coming? But from her world, it has to turn into money. It has to turn into revenue. It has to understand if we're making money. So the question of this is everything from how do we make sure that we are tied and we have the right relationships? One of the things that we are seeing is people are looking for just generating more proposals, but they're not evaluating if the relationships they have are strong. And if they aren't strong, how do they leverage teaming partners and be able to do that to strengthen these relationships? So if we have less opportunities coming out, how do we make sure that we're maximizing and using the data to our advantage? Right? How are we also using this in a very concise way so that we can identify performance issues? If I'm BD and our BD costs are not, as Kim mentioned, inexpensive, I want to know why somebody is performing or not performing. So the idea of this, and I want to use that from a coaching perspective, and I also want to use this to help me continue to enhance my strategy. So this is a really core component of what we do and what's needed to build a really good forecasting vehicle. So then here's the other thing that's interesting is we've got now a really good pipeline and kind of a sales manufacturing starting. We're understanding the relationships and we are continually picking, ideally based on scoring and understanding and data, the right opportunities. The other challenge everybody we're seeing is we only have so many people to write proposals, right? So especially right now at the end of fiscal year, how do I then not only make sure that I've got the best opportunities to go after, but how do I have the vehicles and the people and the capabilities to generate more? And so what we are seeing is a big need of AI to enhance and drive proposal development. Now, when we say proposal development, we had somebody last weekend, I just wanted to guarantee me a win every time. Well, that's not what this is. This is how do we leverage our past performance data and our past RFP and RFI responses to generate real outcomes and getting into a pink team draft in hours, right? Because the ability to win is doing three things. One is maximizing redundant activities. And so if we can get to that pink team piece in hours instead of days and weeks, now we're focused on the things that are going to make it different and winnable. The second part is we've got to make sure we're compliant. We have people that we work with that help the government write and select the actual proposals that are winning to the tune of billions of dollars. And one of the things that they will tell us continually is typically 20 to 40% of the people that put in proposals are knocked out on day one because they're not compliant with what the government is asking for. So those two things continually hurt our ability to generate accurate forecasting. So this part to me is one of the things that makes Unanet Unanet. And it's one of the reasons I'm here is without the ERP piece, I can do everything right on the front end and not realize, because I didn't do any really strong budgeting on the front end to understand my revenue and my different people and how that related to cost. I'm also not doing, because it's disparate, an effective way to do post-sales and post-project analysis where I may be killing it on the front end, but we're actually hurting and hindering margin on the back end. And to me, when we talk about performance and we talk about past performance, profitability has to play a major role in that. I want to know not only where can we be successful and what makes us different, but can we make money on it, right? And as we go through this world of tying the CRM and ERP, to me, especially in this market, is the difference between success and failure and profitability and not profitability. This is constantly understanding where we are, what's working, especially as the government goes to more firm fixed price. We may make a mistake on one. I don't want to make it a mistake twice. And so I want to make sure that we are continually understanding what our profitability was and is, because that also impacts how I'm going to go to market, and it also impacts how we're going to drive better margins through the proposals that we're doing. So really the power of integration and the idea of the whole reason we're on this call today is how do we take and build out an infrastructure? And Kim is 100% right. Tools are part of it, and it's a big part of it, but it's also people, process, and tools, right? And as we go through this, how do we unify these so you have really what is an overall platform for driving growth and the value of doing this and building this out the right way with the right training, with the right resources, focused in on the right roles, is improved forecasting accuracy. Are we feeding our sales manufacturing with the right information? Are we continually picking the right opportunities to go after? Are we maximizing our P-win and our cost of sale by using things like AI to generate redundant, actually remove redundant work and have us focus on the key things that SMEs bring to the table? And then how do we make sure that it's tied to the right sets of financials so that we're continually learning where we should play and shouldn't play? It also makes sure that labor resource is optimized. Everybody we're talking to has to do more with less. So how do we make sure that by focus on the right things, we're maximizing revenue and profit while minimizing our operational headcount? As Kim said, on a revenue predictability, I look at everything through a CRO, chief revenue officer viewpoint. I think I could be doing great, and Kim can go, no, you're not, right? And so how do we constantly give that feedback going back? And most importantly is in a market that is, for the first time, at least in my 50 years of growing up in DC, completely different. How are we using data to accurately make decisions and then continue to make decisions because the ever-changing landscape? So what's the ultimate so what, and why is this so important? It's more wins, it's reduced cost, it's accurate and confident planning, it's scalability and productivity for profitability, and the most important element of all of us is continued growth. That's why, to me, when we talked about doing this LinkedIn Live today, I was really excited about it, because this is the number one challenge we're seeing is everybody needs to grow and they don't know why. But they know why, they don't know how. This is the building blocks for get you to get to how.
Yeah, it's not being desperate, it's really planning for that growth, not feeling that desperation to bid on multiple things all at once, but to find the right thing to bid on at the right time. I think that's key. Okay.
Do we have any questions?
John, there's one thing I want to bring up. I forgot to say, and I want to be sure and say it. If you're looking, I know it's back to the gauge, which is my favorite thing to talk about. It does have in the gauge, it's got the number of indirect employees by functional group, by size of company. That helps you to understand where you are competitively, as well as wrap rates and indirect rates by size of company. And so I think that's another really good use of the data that we have and we can make available to you for free to look and see where you are based on what other people are showing and telling us they're experiencing. And I don't think we have any questions, John.
Well, I think with that, then we will wrap up. Thank you for joining us. We hope you view and us as a resource to help. And please check out the gauge. It is unbelievably worth it. You all have a great day.
All right. Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.